appreciate the opportunity to teach. I really appreciate you all bearing through this with me. Kind of taught a little bit last year in the Acts, going through Acts, and just kind of a conglomerate of a bunch of people who had the desire to teach but never taught before, and really took 2 or 3 chapters apiece. So I taught Acts 12 and 13, so only taught twice prior to this, and then really kind of taken on the full course on this with Gary being a trooper and stepping in. And that, people say that when you teach a class, you get a lot more out of it than the students. And I really didn't understand that until you teach, because I really have. And I look forward to teaching again, trying to sign up next year, since it's the 4th quarter, we do ours differently than the actual calendar to line up with school. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for bearing through it with me. You guys have been really encouraging, and all your comments have been terrific, either during class, after class. I've really got to know a lot more of you through this class, so very thankful for that. So with that being our last class, we're going to talk about friends, laziness, money, self-control, and drunkenness. It's a lot, but there's not as many scenarios and only 1 or 2 scriptures per subject. So with that being, go ahead and dive into the scenario and start talking about friends. So this kind of lines up a little bit with gossip last week, but this one deals more or less, I want to picture in your mind that you have approached this friend and you have tried to get them to stop doing this, and they continually do it. So let's just go ahead and take that into context. I didn't want to take up space on the page, keep everything on one page, not 2. So the scenario is Sarah notices her friend, that is no context that my wife's name is Sarah, so let's just go ahead and knock this out. Sarah notices her friend constantly talks behind people's backs. She wonders if she should keep being close friends or create some distance. And obviously you see there Proverbs 13, verse 20, talks about whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And then furthermore in 17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. So in that first verse, what does that mean? We didn't really harp on that. Walk with the wise. What would that entail? If we're defining wisdom as the same way as we have been the whole class, which is the same way King Solomon did in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9, which is discern between good and evil, and to discern between making good and bad choices, we can say walking with the wise is what in that context?
A good choice.
Someone who makes good choices. Maybe we're not talking about someone who's the smartest, right? We're talking about wisdom in a worldly context, and that person's wise. David Lanfear in the stewardship class, I was listening to that, defines wisdom as the application of knowledge. So maybe not so much book smart in the sense of wise, but street smarts is how we can sum it up. In the context of it being to choose friends who encourage you to do the right things, who encourage you to get to heaven. Yes, Joe?
Air Force story for you.
Great. I love these. I love Air Force stories.
One of my first flight chiefs I had pulled us in the office when we was new to the base, and he said, if you want to have a successful career, you want to be successful in life, watch, and he named off 3 or 4 people. He said, these guys are successful for a reason. The way that they approach work, the way they approach life, the way they handle themselves, the way they stay away from trouble. He said, see what they do, imitate that. He said, don't be like these other guys. He named off some names. He said, these guys are the ones that are always in trouble. They're always the ones making bad decisions. The ones showing up late to class. So stay away from them.
Never walk in Bible class when your dad's making a comment. That's what I just learned from this whole review. That's perfect. That's a good point. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm sure we've all been, the old saying, you are who you are around or who you're friends with, and that's true to me here recently. I mean, if you surround yourself with people who are like-minded and kind of want the same goals, that's what you're going to get. My next point on this is how easy is it when you're hanging around Christians to, like, it's really not to do the wrong thing. I mean, it's a layup. It really is. Yes, Amy.
I don't know if Curtis has said this, but I've heard this from other people too, where they say, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah.
So I've said that to my kids too, but then I've also looked at them and like, I'm around y'all all day. Because they complain all the time and then.
Are you all my future?
And
Yeah,
then
they are, yeah.
Then you start complaining. I mean, you know what I mean? If I'm around kids, little kids all the time, complaining, nag, heavy, then I feel like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, stop, I've got to be the one in control.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the situation's, pending, right? Yeah, that's fair. Yes, Ian.
Because also, you have to be careful though with the whole like-minded, you surround yourself with like-minded people, because that's how groupthink occurs, and.
That's how what occurs? I'm sorry.
Groupthink occurs.
Oh, okay.
Where, it's the case of, you just want to be careful because, many people will claim they're Christian, or many people will claim, that they'll do the right thing, but,
Yeah.
how
No.
often do their actions line up with their words? Is the like-mindedness something you want to be like-minded in, or is it or are there some ideas that are starting to pervade that are not that are against what God says?
Yeah, no, thanks for clearing that up. And I mean, that is kind of the point I'm trying to illustrate, and to the extreme, and not to the extreme of Ian just made. Yes, I'm meaning if you want to be successful at your job, I would try to go be around the person, and maybe they could take you under their wing or mentor you in the person that is successful in the right ways, not the wrong ways. And then also, like what Ian just said, yes, you are correct. You kind of get around that group ideology. Yes. Okay. Laziness. John keeps putting off his schoolwork. He says, I'll get to it tomorrow. Weeks later, he's far behind and stressed. What do you think? Why do we think laziness leads to the problem? Laziness in the majority of our scenarios leads to our problems. Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't see.
This scenario is kind of hard because sometimes I feel like that there's a lot of reasons someone puts something off, and it's not sometimes because they're lazy.
Yeah.
It's because they're unsure or not knowledgeable enough.
Yeah.
But when I think of someone being lazy, it's you see something that needs to be done,
Yeah.
and you just like, somebody else can do it. I'd rather sit here and watch TV than I had to take that trash out. It's like, that's being lazy.
Yeah.
Because
You know it needs to be done.
it needs to be done,
Mhm.
right. But the putting it off thing, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of sometimes see that as maybe there's a problem that
Yeah.
needs to be addressed. Why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm. And I was looked at 10:4, the verse mentioned there, slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes riches.
Mhm.
And just supporting exactly what you just said, 100%. If you know something needs to be done, then we need to take action towards it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a difference between knowing something needs to be done and then maybe making a difficult decision and taking your time and then kind of coming to that conclusion maybe a day before you're supposed to make it.
Right.
In the context of maybe a presentation or being prepared, the quote's going to fail me right now, but it's not so much, or I'll just give you a personal example. Every time I've been nervous before I speak in a non-biblical setting, because I just take this a lot more serious than work, is I've been unprepared. That's really the only reason. If you're super prepared for something and you can really knock down any questions that might be thrown at you, you're going to be pretty confident in the given scenario, which leads to laziness being a problem. But yeah, I agree with you. Yes, Ian.
I think it's a case of like, if I don't have to do it,
Yeah.
then I can do it when I have to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of ways, what we define as, what is being defined as laziness is sort of not taking care of the things you need to do instead of the things you want to do. Because how often are the things you need to do the things you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually going along with that thought, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise without having any chief officer or ruler, meaning, kind of to Ian's point, you don't have to have an overseer or a micromanager looking over you and making sure you get things done. Just need to get it done. Really actually coinciding with Angela's point too. She prepares her bread in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. Preparing for something, being ready, being diligent about the subject. I mean, does that kind of go hand in hand, what you were thinking, Ian? Or is that a stretch?
I think, yeah, I mean, there's part of it in that. I think it's also just a case of,
Yeah, laziness is Gary filled in on this for me. Laziness is so I wasn't here for the first class, so I was able to be here for the second class. Laziness isn't necessarily, this is probably the closest context that we get with the worldview versus the biblical view, like being lazy. We've kind of defined wisdom differently. We've defined being a fool differently, in money, on poverty, debts, etc. And this is kind of the closest one that it gets to, but really it's the intention of there's really, in the scriptures, there's really no desire for the person to be lazy, for the person to not want to be diligent in their efforts. So we just really need to be careful for, that I'll get to it tomorrow type attitude that's in the scenario. Yes?
There's a lot of whys behind why somebody might be lazy. Some of that might be a lack of gratitude, like they're truly not thankful for what they have.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. You're 100% accurate, yeah.
And then another reason may be that they're extremely arrogant because they assume they're owed a tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it's those two things, like pride and arrogance. But I will say, we in America need to schedule rest. God does give us rest, and sometimes people become lazy because they're overworked and they're tired.
Yeah.
Like they haven't really rested, and so scheduling rest instead of making everyday rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I haven't really thought about it that way, from the standpoint of maybe you put yourself in a situation to cause laziness. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and just to go along with that, sometimes being lazy, it's because you're a perfectionist and you want to put it off because you're paralyzed with fear, because you want everything you're doing to be perfect, and you got to get over that, because done is better than perfect, right?
I mean, a lot of things I do in my day-to-day could be considered laziness, because I try to put so much into one day that it looks like I'm pushing it off, but in all reality, I'm like, hey, there's 24 hours, let's rock and roll. Let's see how much we can get done here. But in a lot of aspects, it leaves me unprepared in that scenario. Yeah, all good points. All good points. And the scenario, again, it's really hard putting these together and not making them like too specific. A lot of parents in here, a lot of college-age kids. So with the description of laziness, I think we kind of went through most of. Yes?
And with the ant only does what they can that day. And so sometimes with us, some of us work better under pressure, so we let things build up until we feel the pressure, and then we work 24 hours in an 8-hour period, right? Yeah. But the ant doesn't do that. It's a little bit at a time, and so it doesn't wear itself out.
Yeah.
It just does what it can.
Yeah. I read that passage, I can't tell you how many times for this class, and when we were preparing the material, and I never took from it that view. I needed to hear that tonight, actually. Yeah, because when you look at goals for next year, etc. Think about this fourth quarter. If you're looking at it on a fiscal year, if you're not, the year's kind of financially done. So if something floats in, it floats in. Kind of thinking more projections for next year. You kind of get stressed out on that. Yeah, it's not taking over today. Yeah, thank you for that reminder. That's actually really helpful. All right, talking about finances, money. Here we go. Emily always spends her allowance as soon as she gets it. Later, she doesn't have money when she really needs it. Okay, Proverbs 21:20. Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. I wanted to read 21 because I did a poor job of including that when we went over money and touching on this verse, because I think it really illustrates kind of the back end, if you will. So if you're not to if you pursue treasure and oil, and the foolish man devours it, just like Emily. She goes through her inheritance. She goes through what she had. But really, the importance of it, really, going back to Romans 13, is that's really what we should be pursuing anyway, because Caesar's is Caesar's, and it doesn't matter. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness, which kind of flows into the fruit of the Spirit a little bit in Galatians, will find life, righteousness, and honor. Meaning, you can devour through what you have, which you're not supposed to do, but in the long run, it's not really your full purpose anyway. So, on that subject, and with money, I just want to harp on this because we didn't touch on it again in the scenario. The Bible is not, when it talks about being a slave to the lender, Brian actually brought up a great point about it's really not about spending money or not going into debt. We've discussed several different ways where this culture and society, like we're going to have to. Even if you don't go into debt, you're going to owe your landlord something, regardless. And the point really is kind of biting off more than you can chew in this scenario and really working through that. We as Christians really stray away from money because it's maybe in a negative context, but it's kind of always confused me how, on Sunday, because that's when the elder said that this is the best opportunity to give, we're to use our money positively. Yet we as Christians always kind of shy away from money, helping others kind of with money in that scenario. So I just want to make on the topic that it shouldn't be something we shy away from. It should be something that we don't talk about. I'm not saying you have to go around with your W-2 stapled to your chest. So there's two avenues I'm talking about here, but we didn't really touch on that on the money subject as far as what God has in planned for our money. Because at the end of the day, like I said, in Romans 13, keep going, harping back to that, it's really not ours at the end of the day. And on that point, the parable of Matthew with the talents and the talents, that I always struggle with, why do I want to do more? Why do I want to make more than X? And that parable talks about, he hid it. He took the money and he didn't want to do anything with it. He didn't want to invest it. He didn't want to use his talent. And really just going back to that illustration, I would feel like all of us in here are very gifted. So if you feel like you're maybe settling at your job, like if you're paying your bills, you're taking care of your family, like that's great. That is so awesome. But at the same point, I don't think you should really have any bad feeling for wanting more or wanting to use your capabilities and your talents that God blessed you with. So on that point, we shouldn't be afraid to be successful. We shouldn't be afraid to go out and work hard and do more in that stretch. So those are all topics. I know this is a review, but those are all topics we really didn't get to in the class that I wanted to bring up. So I know it's news. Does anybody have anything? Disagree? Feel free to disagree with me. Yeah, yes ma'am.
I don't think it's greedy to want more. It's greedy to want more without willing to work for it. That's greedy.
Yeah.
You don't want to work for it. You just want it to be given to you, or you want to take it from someone else.
Yeah. You don't really know how many people have worked with somebody what's that like? It's I don't know. I saw it on Instagram. It was a plumber replacing a toilet or something. It was like, oh yeah, no, I got it. I'm just gonna put the earphones in work, and they do. It's like Siri, like how to install a toilet. It's someone that is underqualified for the position. I think we all have met people like that, worked with people like that. They just kind of constantly want more. To your point, at least that's what I think of when you bring that up. They constantly want more, but they really didn't work for it or qualified for it. They just kind of fell up, and that's kind of what leads to greed, really, in my opinion. Good point. Anybody else before we move on? Perfect. Okay, self-control. David loses his temper whenever something doesn't go his way. He often says hurtful words and regrets it later. What are some ways, we talk about this with words, with self-control, and we talk about giving full vent, and I'll flip there because on my answer key I didn't provide the verses for myself because that was a genius idea. 16, can someone read that? 16:32. I'll flip to the next one.
Better a patient person than a warrior. one with self-control and one who takes a city.
Thank you. The imagery of being slow to anger, I can't remember who brought this up to me when we talked about self-control, but it's okay. When we didn't do this. I'm catching myself saying that so many times in this review about questioning how good of a job we've done. We didn't talk about this in self-control, but it's okay to be angry. It's not, when we talk about anger, we need to be slow to anger. We have the right to be angry or have our feelings hurt or do those things. We shouldn't just kind of back to Ian's statement a few classes ago about borderline between standing up for ourselves and being a doormat. So I don't know. How do we do that with self-control with our anger, and give full vent to something like that? I mean, is there anything anybody is trying to do? Is there anything that's useful that you'd like to share with self-control? Because I mean, this is something I struggle with words. I deal with insurance companies all day long, so self-control with those people, that's very annoying. We just pray for it? Okay. We don't do anything to exercise self-control? All right. This is not the class to get mad at. That's fine.
I
Yes.
find that I have to think there used to be a song that said, how's it going to be when it goes down? And I think that, like, if I say this right now, try to always think ahead, like see the future. If you say this is going to cause this to happen. Is that what you want? Or do you want the problem fixed? So you have to think a lot of times, and being silent sometimes, like the warrior or the person who's patient is stronger than the warrior, sometimes stepping back and not saying anything until you have the moment to say it correctly has more power.
Yeah.
I found that especially true with arguing with my husband.
Yeah.
If anybody happens to know him. But sometimes, that quiet word turns away.
Yeah.
That's the other proverb about the quarrel.
Yeah. No, that's and Dave mentioned that we all spend so much time about talking and training on how to present ourselves, but we don't really have training on listening. Mm-hmm. And I think kind of just going along with what you said, if you actually listen to the other person, maybe try to see yourself from their standpoint, maybe that self-control really shifts. Because maybe you realize you're in the wrong of a scenario. That's
gives you a minute to consider a lot of things.
A lot of things. Once it's out there.
That's a problem.
Yeah, once it's out there, it is out there. Yes, that's a good point.
And I found that true too with food. I've been trying to be on a diet.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to lose some weight, but the same thing is true. You have to see a goal ahead of you. And is this worth this? Is this worth these calories to not meet that goal? Is it worth it?
Yeah. Just because you have one Chips Ahoy doesn't mean you gotta have the other 9. Yeah, I mean the self-control. It's like, well, I ruined it with like this one, so like let me go ahead and do that. Yeah. I know it's kind of
and I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Yeah, I know. The older you get, those sleeves get smaller and smaller for some reason. But no, I agree with you, and I know I'm joking on that particular point, but that leads into the next one. I don't want to get us too far with it, but drunkenness. I really don't like the fact that I labeled it just drunkenness because there's so many other things that pertain to that, and we're going to get to that later. But yes, Ms. Angela, I agree. That's a good point. Yes, ma'am.
I just read this book called Unoffendable, and it talks about how we as Christians we really don't have the right to be angry, and how Scripture tells you all the time to stay away from anger.
Yeah.
And how we can flip that and be grateful instead, and that it takes a lot of practice and self-control, and
Yeah.
and how difficult that is.
Yes, I would agree with you, and I think maybe I was miswording myself. 1 John 4:7-19. When you talk about that with love, and when you talk about that with patience, and you understand loving your neighbor, loving yourself, and then it wraps up with God abiding in you, and that and that's what that is. It's a very powerful passage. In that, yes, like your ultimate result should be love, and that's actually a really good point. I don't want to be misleading with what I said. I'm just meaning the state of, if Spencer walks up here and hits me in the face, my first reaction is not going to be to hug him.
Oh.
You know, like
Yeah.
going down. You know, like it's happening. So I mean, it's your first response is to be angry, but that's what I kind of mean. You have the right to be angry.
Well, that's shock and you're gonna protect yourself, so, yeah.
Maybe he looks like he could take me. I don't know. That's a lot of protection, but I don't know. Yeah, no, to your point. Yes, I agree with you. Are we meeting in the middle there, or maybe I understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
I'm just, you know.
That's actually what was the name of that book?
Unoffendable.
Unoffendable.
About how to learn to not be offended by anything. And the writer himself was like, I'm still working on this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a very passionate person, so
Yeah.
I obviously have a lot to work on when it comes to that. But it opened my eyes to a lot of things and a lot of the ways I was reacting towards things.
Well, especially with work. I mean, if you work with a lot of people, or if you work in a big company, or if you work with if you're in my situation, like you're the vendor that works with a company who has a lot of people, and you're interacting with a lot of individuals on a day-to-day basis, like that's very challenging. Like you have the right, on that. But the Proverbs, and I can't quote it right now, but it does talk about how really at the end of all things, like we really shouldn't be mad. At the end of the day, life's too short on that.
I mean, even driving down the road when somebody pulls out in front of you.
Did you see me today at 11:30?
You know.
Is that what this is about? It's very, okay, that's a unique way. While I'm teaching, that's a very unique way.
That's passive aggressive.
Yeah, I'm living my class. That's how we're going to do it. Okay. Yeah, Ian?
But what are some scriptural ways to have an outlet for anger? Because we see these verses and, there's a difference between, flying off the handle at the slightest interaction versus a steadily building anger that has been building, and it's just for some reason it's just not going away.
Yeah.
It might be a person who's just been pushing every single button, and you're trying not to let them push your buttons, but they're just pushing the one button, they keep pushing. What is an outlet, or what should we be looking for outlets for that? Healthy outlets, obviously, and scripturally sound outlets.
The biggest thing in the book is that it says you can choose to not be offended. You get to choose your reaction,
Yeah. Well,
You can choose to not be offended by that person who pulled out in front of you. You can choose to not be offended by that person who went and told your secret or whatever.
Yeah.
You get to choose.
Betrayal. Talked about that last week.
Yeah.
When I tell you something, I want to say between me and you. If I told you, feel honored. That's just the way I feel about my personal stuff. Yes, ma'am. I'll get to you, Ian. I got you. Yes.
I do think there's a difference between the kinds of anger that you can feel. So you can be angry that you are offended because somebody said something to you to hurt your feelings. Or you can be angry at the evil in the world and the hurt that it causes, or somebody's violated you physically or emotionally. You can be angry about all of those things, but the way that you respond in your anger is what is challenging as a Christian, because we're asked to be forgiving. We are asked to turn the other cheek, right? And then also you can just walk away. That is a choice. You don't have to have an altercation with somebody. But I think of the verse where it says, the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Am I quoting that right?
Yeah, it's James chapter 1.
Yeah, and so just because you are angry about the injustice of this world, it's not going to produce right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So me getting angry and losing myself to that emotion is not right. And I'm not going to make right come from that by getting angry and lashing out.
Yeah. Those are all really good points. Which one did you bring up in James? James? Is that what you said?
I'm not good at quoting, but I can remember the words.
Jody quoted
The
it.
wrath of God does not produce.
What was it, Jody?
Or the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot. That's a really good answer. I mean, with Ian's point about the
James
scripture.
chapter 1, verse 21, right? Or, let's see.
I've been hit head on by another car crossing the median, with a girl on a phone and dropped it. And so now I struggle when people cross that double yellow line. It actually makes me angry when I'm with my kids because I feel like they're being so careless.
Yeah.
But I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go chase them down,
Yeah.
right, in my anger. Or I'm not gonna like give vent to it, but I might be like, whoa, stay over.
Yeah, which is what we talked about in Proverbs about giving full vent, like what that
Right.
means. I mean, Ian, answering your question, I mean, you know, we can talk about it and dive into it later, but, you know, Second Peter chapter 2, I mean, talks about to, you know, be in a situation and conduct yourself in a situation so when someone blames you, that you have the confidence, and they look like the foolish one. That's a scriptural way, is to kind of always keep yourself in check. And I know you just asked me that question on spot. I'm doing my best here, brother, dig another thing up for you. But 2 Timothy talks about the vessels. That's a really huge one for me. I have the choice, going back to Amy's point, you have the choice to be angry. I have a choice to be a vessel. And then I hate to just kind of blanket it with this answer, or maybe a cop-out, but man, last 21 months for me, man, it's been prayer. Probably haven't prayed, yeah, I mean, I don't know if they've all been, you know, our model prayer in Matthew 6, perfect, but I have faith that he heard me because I'm in it with all conviction that I had. So when you talk about self-control and doing that, putting yourself in a situation, and then I think really scripturally the other reason too is everything we've been talking about as far as self-control with the friends that we hang around with and being productive. So yes, ma'am, and then Joey.
And I was going to tie that into what you're just saying, you know, the friends you hang around with. So if there's something that's upsetting me in my life, I'm the type of person, I talk to think. So when I'm talking, it helps me think and reframe what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So when I talk, I handle my problems better. My husband thinks to talk. So he's in his head.
I mean, look at it right now. He's doing it right now. Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying right now, brother. I got you.
So
Yeah.
I need friends that I can talk to. Because, like you said, give full vent to your anger. That pressure, that emotion has to go somewhere. So you've got to find a way to channel it in a positive way. And for me, that's having a close friend I can talk about the trials that I'm going through.
Mhm.
And then when I feel better, I hope they feel better. They might feel traumatized.
So, yeah. No,
I
that's
have to be careful.
Careful,
Choose
yeah.
wisely.
yeah. Yeah, maybe you need a lot of friends because you wear one of them out. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yes, Joey.
I mean, self-control is more than just anger, though. When we look at this self-control, you know, Proverbs 25:28, that's like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. That self-control is more than just anger. That self-control is, you know, as we're going to talk about in a minute, drinking. That self-control is about your language. It's about what you participate in, what you allow to take your time. You know, all of those things is self-control. And then you look at Romans chapter 12, it talks about being transformed daily. All of that is an active process that we have to do every single day. You know, we don't become a Christian and all right, now everything's Christian in my life. Everything's smooth. I'm on the right path. And you know, don't just figure it out today and all right, we're good to go. You're going to have to figure it out again tomorrow.
Yeah.
It is a continual process for us to have self-control in everything that we do.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I mean, it is not just anger. Self-control is, you know, Angela talked about dieting. We talked about what we say, and anger leads to strife. Self-control who we hang out with. Yeah, all good points. So anyway, self-control is also in Galatians. It's through the Spirit, and I think it's the last one we talked about. Self-control kind of being that basket that we put everything else in, and kind of swarms the other fruits. So, yes, ma'am.
I was just thinking about Ian's question back there about, you know, a lot of times that builds up because you don't say something right when you should have to, you know, with some thought, of course. But if you look at examples of Jesus, if someone did something, he would turn around and say to Peter what he needed to say. You know, it doesn't have to be ugly. It doesn't have to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
It just has to be like, hey, you know, that is not acceptable to me that you said that.
Yeah.
And just see what they say.
Oh,
because sometimes we bottle it up because we
Yeah.
don't say it.
yeah, and the way that I've, like Jesus, I'm not taking credit for it, is to just say what you just said, but turn it into a question, like he does a lot of the times. It's like, hey, where'd that come from? You're yelling at me right now. Where's that?
Yeah.
Where'd that friction start with you?
Right.
I mean, that's a, I don't know. I come, I'm just busy 100 miles an hour, and sometimes I come across as being too rash, or someone emails me and says, "Hey, can you do Thursday or Friday?" I respond back, "Yes." Didn't really help them out any, but in your point, we could be correct in that. Yeah, those are good points.
To do that well, you have to care more about what's better for the other person than making yourself feel better.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you gotta have the heart.
Yeah,
Yeah, is figuring out the problem. What's the problem we have versus
yeah, yes.
versus we have an attitude with each other. What's
Mhm.
our problem that we're having?
Yeah, it all sounds so simple when we talk it out. And doing what Dave talked about and what you're mentioning now is very hard in the moment.
Yeah.
Which I'm very thankful for God's grace on that. So, okay, with the time we have left, again, not just on really drunkenness. I know these passages kind of support the reasonings for not to partake, but at the same time, I just kind of want to set our framework around. It's around the substances. It's around what we do, where we go, what we say. Not really just around this. So, chapter 20, verse 1: Why is a mocker strong drink, a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. Sarah Grace and I watch. The only common ground we can find on TV is true crime, which is scary because it's always the wife killing the husband. So that old joke, like that's kind of weird. 11 o'clock at night watching that. But the lady in Boston, I don't mind saying her name. It's national news. Karen Reed, I think is her name. She allegedly ran over a Boston police officer, and the police force in Boston is very tight, and she got hit with the big blue wall, as they said in the documentary. As far as they just wanted to find somebody to just put this thing away, like you killed one of our own, let's move on with it. And the big instance in this is that there was heavy drinking that night. And she really couldn't understand, she had like a 4-hour window where she kind of convinced herself, like, maybe I did do this, like maybe I did hit him with my car, I ran him over. None to say less, everybody was drunk, everybody was drinking. The person who had the least amount of alcohol was like 3 or 4 beers, and I think the gentleman was like 6'6", 280 pounds, but without reasonable doubt, the jury couldn't say like that person was still in their right mind, even though his size, even though like he said, like, yeah, I'm a heavy drinker. I drink 4 or 5 beers after work every day, and for a man that size, there were expert witnesses come up and talk about his blood work, etc. And he was like, no, like he could fully operate, etc. Well, the argument is like you still couldn't take his word for it, which is the same reason why if your best witness in a murder case is a well-known drug addict that is not recovered whatsoever, they don't put him on the stand. It's not a reputable source. So for the college age people in here, maybe, I don't know, I'll just put an age on it. Seems like people around my age and younger really struggle with this because of just peer pressure. I understand the Bible doesn't just come out specifically and say, do not drink alcohol. It talks about, everybody wants to hang their hat on drunkenness. And while that may be the case, what defines drunkenness? And then also, furthermore, this lady faced life in prison, all because she couldn't say with a cognitive mind. Because if she was the only sober one there that night, there's without a doubt. Hulu at least took 30 minutes to talk about it in this amazing 5-episode documentary that, if you take out the language, is actually really entertaining. So with that, I just kind of want to use that supporting kind of mark on drunkenness, a worldly example, because I understand what the scripture says. I understand about banqueting. I think we're looking around, surveying the room, and talking about that. what that means with the time we got left. I don't want to dive too much into that. But, I understand it's something people struggle with, but I really just want to arm you for a reason not to feel peer pressure in a scenario to do that. And that's not just drinking. That's the words, like what Joey said. That's the words we say. Anything that we do that we shouldn't be doing. How to kind of combat against that. And I know we talked about in this class when we brought this up about gluttony as well. When someone offers you something, hey, I'm really working on myself right now, and that's just not something I'm doing. And that's a really good way for me that I've opened up. But luckily, times have kind of changed a little bit, especially corporate America. When you say something like that, they're like, "Oh, that's really fascinating. Like, what are you doing?" It's like, "Well, I'm just reading my Bible more, and I just don't know if I see where that lines up." I know it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple, but that's opened a lot of conversations. And immediately conversations dropped and we moved on. Because so much when somebody's smoking weed or somebody's drinking alcohol, there's a lot of peer pressure like, "Why aren't you doing this? Like, this is harmful. God made this substance. Wine's in the Bible. It says wine's good for your stomach," which you could argue till cows come home that alcohol back then versus alcohol now, and what's the actual medical benefits of it is not really what makes you drunk, the alcohol, as so much it is with the yeast. So that's another debate. So anyway, on that note, really, I'm not condemning you. I'm just telling you that I'm just trying to get you some help for when you're out there on it's 4th and 1 and it's and time's ticking away. We got to score a touchdown. I'm just trying to help you avoid it. So that's just Lawson's word of wisdom. So I got 2 comments.
Just real quick, I remember a comment when we talked about this a few weeks ago in this class. It came up that if we're drinking alcohol, whether just reading it in a quote social setting or are we really bringing glory to Christ? Glory to God. That's a question that we all have to ask ourselves.
With anything that you do, like when you walk into that establishment that you shouldn't be at, is this glorifying and honoring God? If I'm saying these words, if I'm gossiping, it's anything around that subject. Yes, and the Bible does such a great job of it's timeless. Like we talked about with modesty, it didn't say wear clothes this long, because it's cultural. It does a great job of the whole subject in a very short, finite amount of words, and I think we kind of put it into speculation when we start taking apart that. You just have to ask yourself at the end of the day, does this glorify and honor God? Yeah. But thank you for bringing that back up.
I think among other things the Proverbs do, like the other Proverbs 23, the idea of not looking on the wine when it's red. It really is that path of, don't go near for where it may lead. And I think there are connections in the Proverbs between sort of wine, alcohol, all of that, and sexual temptation and sin. And back in Proverbs chapter 5, 6, or 7, the father gives the son advice, don't go near the door of her house. I can go near the door of her house and I won't go in. No, his point was, don't walk down that to get anywhere close. I think the wisdom there is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's pretty easy on that slippery slope, to your point. Yes, that's good advice.
Wisdom, like he's saying in this, is not looking for a checklist. Does the Bible say I can have a drink? Does the Bible say drinking is a sin? Drunkenness is a sin. It clearly states that in the Bible. And like he's saying, we don't need to be looking for, well, what can I do or what can I do? Like Curtis said, at the end of the day, does that bring honor to God? If not, then just don't do it.
And it's easier for some to say it's not my temptation, right? Spending time away from my family, money, etc. That's my temptation. It's easier for one of us to say one thing than actually do it. All good thoughts. Thank you all so much for bearing with me through these 12, 13 weeks, whatever it was. Yeah, y'all been awesome.
Great.